Hey guys, it's Jen, your 2023 YPN Vice Chair, here with the December 2022 Market Snapshot. Right here you can see that the median sales price was $326,750, which was up 3.7% from December 2021. Then you have your absorption rate at 1.3, which was up 85.7% from December 2021. The active inventory, we had 1,105 homes on the market, which was up 51% from December 2021. We closed on 660 sales, which was down 37.4% from December 2021. And the average days on market was 30, which was up 66.7% from December 2021.
Thank you for the market report. I don't know if I've ever seen a green sheet like that, Heather.
I don't know where all the houses went or where they are.
Well, the good news is we're going to talk with the mayor here in a little while about how to hopefully make this situation better and get some more inventory in our city.
One day soon.
Yeah. So welcome to WakeUP YPN this morning, and we are honored. We get to have Mayor Timothy Keller on our show this morning. He's kind of in between meetings, but he will be here for a short amount of time. So with that, and having the mayor on our show, I wanted to, one of my favorite quotes, and one that, our MLS director, Richard, and I have talked quite a bit about. I know it's one of, I think probably every politician or every mayor probably reads this at some point in time. It's Theodore Roosevelt's The Man in the Arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
That's deep.
It is. It's one of my favorites. My dad had it on the wall in his bedroom for my entire life, and I used to read it all the time and think about the idea is it's not the critic that counts. It's the person who's actually putting themselves in there and doing the work.
It's the one that's in the mud.
Putting your neck out there. And I think about this when we have the mayor on because he's the number one guy that everybody's going to look at whenever anything is happening, right? Both good and bad.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, that I think that is a good lead off for our show. Have you here, sir?
Thanks.
So I think we'll go right into questions. Obviously, the metal mayor, You're famous for that. One of the questions that was sent to us was, what band do you want to come to Albuquerque?
Oh man, that's such a great one.
Do you have like we haven't seen them or like something like that?
I'd have to go a little bit old school in that I know Guns N' Roses came to Las Cruces.
Okay.
I don't think they ever came to Albuquerque, maybe like way early on before my time. So that'd be one. I think it's kind of the same story with Rage Against the Machine. So I was supposed to go see them in Cruces as well.
Oh man, I love Rage.
So I'd throw out those two, but I love the genre. So there's dozens of bands.
Rage is one of those you have to like travel to go see nowadays, right? Like they go to interesting places, like,
right?
Like very like they go to like very crazy places. One of my first concerts ever was Guns N' Roses and Metallica at RFK Stadium.
Wow,
which was a crazy.
That was like the most legendary concert.
And
I didn't get to go, but it was in Cruces.
Oh,
that was the closest it came.
Yeah, blew my mind and was totally like out of this world.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fun.
We could do a metal podcast some other time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure that one could go on forever.
I'm sure what we really want to talk about is more of as the Realtors Association, we talk about housing. That's what we're about. We're about helping and doing what we can to create more inventory, create more more economy, more we want to do everything we can to better our town and our livelihoods, and we know that you're focused on that as well, sir. So one of our first questions is it's noted that there's a housing crisis nationwide. Right. It's not just locally. A lot of people like to think that it's Albuquerque only, but really it's everywhere. We see it in our empty lots. We see it on the street corners, things like that. I know that you have a plan. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think, first the diagnosis aspect of this, I think, is one that, look, as realtors, you've all been aware of this for a long time. But we finally had some real sort of studies done on this, and it turns out we're short about 18,000 on the low end or 30,000 units. And that shortage is so big, right? It's actually all houses, like it's even nice houses and, everything in between. And so when we got that done about last summer, it was a big realization for us that, this problem is happening to us, like whether we like it or not. It's not something we can just sort of wish away or pilot program away. We actually have to do something that like systematically changes how we're thinking about housing in the Duke City. And so that was really the genesis for our Housing Forward program. And we can go into that in whatever detail you'd like. But basically, there's a couple of components. We think that the sort of government, in a sense, city government, has to really own about 5,000 new units. And that should be like supportive housing and housing aimed at getting people off our streets. But we also need the private sector to add in like another 15,000, 20,000. Mm-hmm. So how do we do that? How do we incentivize that? And we think really the best way and the most efficient way is through our zoning code. And so that brings us to this whole discussion about how our city is currently zoned, which is basically for sprawl, and how it should be zoned, which is for really a true urban community, which is what I think what everyone agrees. I mean, Albuquerque is the biggest city in 1,000 square miles. So like if you think there was some small town, which I do love. I mean, I was born and raised here, and my dad actually was a member of the Realtors. Nice. And so, in fact, I think he was still the realtor on the last house I bought, which is great. But anyway, that's true and that's wonderful. But we also have a responsibility to be like an urban center, I think, for New Mexico. And so part of that means we also have a responsibility to have a zoning code that matches that vision.
Good answer.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, and us as the real estate community, how do we help that? How do we make that, more of a reality in the future?
I think the biggest thing you could do in the very short term is actually, it sounds cliche, but get involved in city council. And the funny thing is, we all know who your city councilor is, and maybe know your city councilor for some of the properties that you're marketing. And the reason is because this fight for our future, literally sort of the battle for the future of Albuquerque, is playing out in city council this spring, like this winter and spring. So there's going to be votes on updating our zoning code to just allow more, a little bit more vertical growth, allow casitas, allow conversions of commercial real estate to residential, allow conversions of old hotels to residential, either condos or apartments. All of that is going to be processed through city council in a public way. And I do anticipate these votes being very close. They're usually very, very contentious. And this is also one of the few areas where I think there's also now some real unity. I think we see a combination of folks acknowledging the fact that it shouldn't be so hard to make a casita for your grandma or for your, kids who may have either you need them nearby, or maybe there's mental and behavioral health challenges, you name it.
Right.
But there are some things now, and we see empty, commercial real estate buildings. It's like, but we need housing. Why can't we just flip those and convert them? Well, you can't because of zoning. So I think the good news is there's momentum and there's sort of rare unity across the political spectrum that we need to really make this happen.
Yeah, you hear me on this show. If you ever watch the show, I'm constantly going, call your city council person.
All the time.
All the time. That's one of our things. It's one of the things that I think about a lot, and it's a good point that the urban sprawl, that was the way, right? The whole American way from the beginning of when we became a country, from the first settlers that came out here, was take over as much land as you possibly can. But we're in a situation where, we've got the mountains on one side and we've got Mesa on the other side, and we've got pueblos all around us, and we're not taking over their land. So really Albuquerque only can infill. Right. But
right.
we hear so many times, I'm in conversation after conversation with different groups, and a lot of times it's people are so worried about once that infill comes in that their property won't be valued as much as it was before, or that it's going to ruin their neighborhood in some way or something like that. But I can tell you that my next question is really more of, with an aging community, right? I look at my grandparents. They live in a 5-bedroom house that they bought back in the 40s, right? That is there's 2 people living in it, right now. that house should be back on the market for a family that really could use that. They totally could live in a casita in my backyard and be close and be protected and be safe, and have everything that they need. I really love that. That's the idea that I keep going towards. Is part of our problem is that we have some inventory that isn't being utilized also, right? What do you think about that?
And old inventory. So, I think for us, it is amazing if you think about sort of the history of our city and how we've grown, and as you mentioned, the key sort of demographics around us and so forth, that there's only certain ways we can grow. And now what we're seeing is a problem that I think we're not used to, which is, quietly the economy is actually doing very well. And so there's also no one to work anywhere. Newsflash, there's a huge workforce shortage.
Right.
So, I am actually not a lawyer. Most people think so my background is in business, and there's some basic supply and demand issues with workforce that are happening in Albuquerque right now. And right now the demand is super high and the supply is really low of labor. So what's the answer to that? Well, people should be moving to Albuquerque. And they are in more than we've seen in the last decade. But of course, then it begs the question, where are they going to live? And so then we see this what we have right now, extremely even and chunky either price growth, where there's, you just all of a sudden for 6 months, you can't do anything because prices are going so high. Or you see a stock problem where people can't get the kind of house or the kind of apartment where they want to live. And then you see the only answer is only 2 answers for us if we don't fix this. One, we just won't grow. I mean, in the end of the day, those companies will eventually just leave and say there's no workforce in Albuquerque.
Right.
So we don't want that to happen. The other challenge would be that we have, we want a vibrant metro community. And so we obviously have Las Lunas and Rio Rancho and, folks up in Tejeras. But I think the question is, do we want to have that centerpiece, whether it's downtown or the city of Albuquerque with, sports teams and stadiums and shopping malls and all the conveniences of urban living that we like, including healthcare and hospitals and so forth. But to do that, we do have to grow in Albuquerque, right? Or else, we always compare ourselves to different other cities and things. And I think look at it this way, we can't really, people, talk about Phoenix. That is not a good analogy because of pueblos and government lands. We actually can't just super sprawl like that. And then also,
They're so much cooler than Phoenix.
That's why I like to say
Man,
that too.
like,
I mean,
no offense to anybody from
we should,
Phoenix,
We should
but
really
really.
have another show on Phoenix because I have a great rivalry with Phoenix. My brother lives there, and so I can make fun of it all the time. And their mayor is from Albuquerque.
What?
Yeah, I know. So anyway, lots of good rivalry with Phoenix. But, so at the end of the day, look, it is about a choice for like Albuquerque growth. Or else it's either not going to happen or it's going to happen further out where our city's just going to be totally disconnected.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are the choices that are in front of us.
Last year we talked about, we had the mayor of Rio Rancho on. We talked about the Paseo del Volcan project and what that would mean to kind of tie in kind of Albuquerque and Rio Rancho
that's a
and
good idea.
Bernalillo. And, and that's part of one of those things that, if we're doing infill, a good, metro loop would probably be, one of those next steps.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about how we can help. We'll definitely we're involved. We're going to keep being involved. Back to a little bit of fun, and then we'll talk a little bit more about we talk about IDO and the ways that we can. I have an office downtown, and we talk about the rail trail coming in. And I think about things like these IDO changes, like height restrictions and things like that, being probably fairly detrimental to a successful project like that. What do you think of that?
Well, and you did mention earlier too this, the challenges, like everyone thinks a lot of our housing plan is a good idea, except when they find out like what's next door to them or, that kind of thing. And so relevant to some of these projects. And I think at the end of the day, what folks have got to realize is that we're actually not talking about like a huge change from what you experience in other cities. I think they're not aware like how out of date and behind we really are. I mean, we're stuck in a 1970s, maybe even 1960s zoning regimen that doesn't really make sense for an urban community. But think of it like this. Edo, East Downtown, is a really good example. So when we changed the zoning there to allow a little more height on Central and also to allow some historic home preservation, but also conversion and things like this, and we fixed up the Albuquerque High and converted it to lofts, this was like Albuquerque's grand experiment. All the local entities were really worried about that because of all these reasons, well, not in my backyard, or I'm going to get like different kinds of, things that are going to bring down property value and all this. And now people love Edo. And I do think this is the magic of, in some ways, like, just thoughtful policy. If you do it right, it does actually lift everyone up. And it actually enhances really your property value. Or like if you have a home that you can add a casita on it, that's going to enhance the value. So in many ways, I think we sort of stand to gain from this. But also if you need a house, we need that stock to bring down the price, right? So these two things go together. We want to see people's values, property values enhanced, but like not to the exclusion of where we have such expensive housing we can't afford it. So that's why we do have to, it really does come back to like tens of thousands of new units. We are not going to get out of this until we do that. But if we do add those, I do think we're going to see a situation where our city sort of grows in a healthy way that does benefit everyone, whether you're looking for a house, whether you're trying to sell your house.
Right. And we keep talking about the zoning and the IDO. Just for reference of those who may not know what the IDO is, what is that?
IDO is like when I got this job, they were like these words that are just, loaded. There's the CASA, which is a whole other, that's not house. It has to do with our reform agreement. There's the art at the time, this was like, and then there's the IDO. So,
and you walked right into that one.
Yeah, I walked into all three acronyms. So the IDO is, of course, the Integrated Development Ordinance, and it's just the name of sort of our total policy package of zoning. And, for really, most realtors, I'm sure, are well aware of this, but at a basic level, what people don't understand is all the land in Albuquerque is designated for something. It could be designated for houses or factories or, apartments. And I'm really oversimplifying it.
Right.
And we did go through a big revamp a couple of years ago that had, right before I got in, that had some real challenges and so forth. So we've kind of been down the block from a process perspective, but no one has ever looked at it from a housing policy perspective. since I think it was created in the 60s and 70s. And so this is also our chance to weave in things like equity, understand our underinvested older neighborhoods and how we invest in the core of our city. And create those vibrant communities that we love, that we see in other cities. And so that's what the IDO is all about, even though it's just 3 letters. I mean, it's probably one of the top 5 most important documents in our entire city in our daily lives when it comes to at least government and real estate. And so it's a good one to follow. Mm-hmm. It's only like 1,000 pages long.
Oh, no, I've seen it. I've taken a deep look at it. And yeah, only about 1,000 pages.
Well, and it doesn't get updated right? Am I correct? In it only gets updated at certain intervals, and that's part of what's going on right now?
So it's supposed to be only updated once a year, but city council can, with the right amount of votes, update it whenever they want. But the goal, since it was kind of revamped now about 6-7 years ago, was to just touch it once a year so that we're not constantly fighting over it. And, it did used to be, I think, like 3,000 pages. So, I guess in some ways the fact that we're able to argue about housing policy may be in some result of the fact that we actually sort of cleaned it up and we can all find it online and so forth and know what zone we're in. Those were even challenges just 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, and online they have clickable links where you can jump to pages. So you don't necessarily have to flip through page by page to see exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I should just credit our planning department has done a great job on the transparency front.
Absolutely.
Now it's all not a mystery. And it's kind of cool the way that works. Like once you throw everything out there, it's like, all right, well, maybe now we should actually use this as a tool for thinking about growth in our city.
One of our first, it was a coffee meetup before it was a podcast. And one of our first coffee meetups, we had somebody from planning come and literally just go over, because the idea had just kind of changed at that time. It was a couple of years ago, and it was just lay it out for us, let us know what's going on, that kind of thing. Let's see, where do you want to go?
So every New Mexican has their favorite, and they all are going to have their choice, and it's more of a New Mexico thing because you don't have this hard choice in any other state. But which way do you go? Are you a red or a green?
Oh, great one. I'll tell you how I handle this one. It's always tempting to say Christmas, which of course, is the fun and political answer.
Right.
But I do it based on geography. So I have to tell you, if I am north of Albuquerque, I always go red. And if I'm south of Albuquerque, I always go green. And that's really never let me wrong, because there is it's kind of the Chimayo red. Yeah. And then of course, green from Hatch. So that's how I play it.
Got it. Me and Gabe were talking earlier, and he had a great one. If it's pork, you go red. If it's chicken, you go green.
I like that too. That makes a lot of sense.
That's always, I think that's how I go, is what am I eating it with?
But what about your huevos rancheros?
Oh, man, you're right. I don't know.
Yeah, see, then I'd have to go geography there. Yeah.
It would have to depend on
that. Because you got to get red. I'm just saying, I'm so biased on this, but like, if you're up when I go to Santa Fe legislature, the difference between red and Santa Fe and other places I won't name it's wildly different in a great way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. I love that you talked about actually having inventory as being the solution to our problem. A lot of people, I'm a property manager, and I get quite often I get these people that come with why is my rent so high? Why is rent so high? Why are rents increasing kind of thing?
Yeah.
And the real easy answer is, why wouldn't it? If you're an investor, or you're a say you're an old lady that owns a house that you're using to subside off of, why wouldn't you get as much off of or as much of a return as possible? But with inventory, that levels back out. And that's what I continue to tell people, is the only reason that rents are high is because there isn't anything. The lack of inventory is what really keeps that level. So I love the idea that you're talking about, increasing that, and that's the way to level it out.
And just I do love the way that's played out, like in our city's history. When I was a kid, like I remember Rio Rancho is actually quite old, the old part of Rio Rancho. But the newer part was all about when Intel came in, and I remember that era. And, what we had is we had these like 10-year cycles where we couldn't really figure this out. And I think part of it is because our zoning program was so bad. But, basically there was nowhere to grow. So we do like as fast as we can housing. and just neighborhood after neighborhood, which we see, Rio Rancho, West Side, even the Southwest Mesa. And it's good especially because they're new. I mean, they're great places to live. But what trailed behind, right? It took us 10 years to get schools out there. We're still trying to landscape all the medians, and so it just takes so long for everyone to catch up. And just now we've kind of actually really caught up, especially with respect to schools. And even now we're just doing police and fire stations on the Southwest Mesa that, we should have done 20 years ago. But if you get the growth right, you don't have those 10-year gaps where you're living in an awesome new home in a new community, but there's like no school,
right?
and
no
there's also no
store,
fire station, And so we're still suffering the pains of what we went through in the 90s when we were growing rapidly, because it was so poorly planned. And so now's our chance, assuming we can grow, which so far we're demonstrating we have the potential for that because of the job need. We can actually do it in a way that's in step with schools and with police and fire and so forth.
Right, infrastructure first.
Or at least at the same time. Yeah.
Right.
Just not 10 years later. That's the key.
That's a good one. That's a good one. We love to keep the show, informative, but light and that kind of thing as well. We talk about like either other podcasts from time to time or other shows or other books, quite
Good
often books. Do you have a favorite? Or what are you reading right now? Or do you get to read? You're probably the busiest guy in town. I don't know how.
I do. Well, I read. It's a long story. I'm very dyslexic, so reading is
boy.
I haven't read a book in like 20 years.
It's
too hard.
Well, that's a real thing.
But
that's a thing that a lot of people don't realize. Our son struggles.
Oh, wow.
It's very hard for him to go to school, and he hates to read for that exact reason.
Listening, so book tapes as they used to be called, but now it has just changed my life. So now I listen to a lot of books. I'm a voracious listener. So yeah, it sounds like it resonates with your family too.
I have to have a paper book. That's just my old school kind of.
He
and I'll run through
loves
them.
to read.
But she loves
likes
to listen.
But I
and
like
son,
to listen, and I've got about 4 different books that I listen to, kind of in a loop in my car, driving around, doing real estate stuff or kids stuff. I have books that I listen to in the car, and I find it much more helpful because I also struggle with reading.
Wow. Well, so I'll give you 2 book recommendations. One, for anyone struggling with dyslexia, ironically, there's a book, which is, that was probably one of the last books I actually read, but it's called The Gift of Dyslexia, and it's really good for parents with kids too. So
awesome.
I would recommend that. And it's short. It's like 70 pages.
Perfect.
But it was it certainly changed kind of my outlook. And it's the book I wish I had when I was younger. So, and right now, which is, sort of related to this, but it just happened naturally. I've been reading a ton of books on Jane Jacobs versus Robert Moses. And so if folks aren't familiar with this is like this showdown in New York City between the biggest infrastructures our country's ever had, and then like neighborhoods. And if you read enough of these books, you also realize it was very complicated, but, the whole reason New York looks like it is because of this guy Robert Moses, and he did some terrible things. But it's also it has to do with what sprawl is and how highways are built and things like that. And then you see on the other end, Jane Jacobs was someone who was saying articulating what you were saying, which is understanding inventory. Clearing out houses, in this case, in Manhattan, was actually a terrible idea, because then everyone has to commute in, and it put all this stress everywhere. And of course, inherently these were people of color, and, there's all sorts of racism in this argument or in this discussion. But those 2 characters, if you really want to deep dive on some dorky planning lessons, you look up those 2.
Got it. Well, we know your time is very valuable and you've got a very busy day ahead of you. And being mayor must be very stressful. But one important question is, what's your favorite part about being mayor?
There's a lot to love about it. I always say it's super fulfilling. And so that's probably my favorite part. I go to bed every day and I am exhausted. Now that's about midnight or 1 a.m. But I never have trouble sleeping, because of all that goes into each and every day. But then also I wake up grateful for the opportunity. I mean, to me, it really is to have the chance to do these things, whether it's even some of the fun stuff in between, with arts and culture and things like this, or the zoo, or it's working on our toughest challenges. To me, it's awesome. So I'm energized each and every day in this job.
Well,
Awesome.
we appreciate you for that, for sure. I've been a fan for a long time, but absolutely. But it's one of those where, we were before, when you were first campaigning, we met you a few times.
Yeah.
I voted with you and your family. We
That's
share
right.
a polling place. You came to our Little League,
Yeah.
and these are those things that, like, it really resonates not only to me, but like my children. My children know that they have seen you. They know who you are. They know that the person that runs our city actually is a real person that comes out and does things with people and talks to them. And, and throughout the opening pitch, we loved having you at Lobo Little League a couple of years ago.
Even
That
this
was fun. I
morning.
still have the hat.
I hope
It's a great hat.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even this morning, our son's like, I know the mayor. It's like,
well,
yeah.
you met him.
That's awesome. Well, that makes it all worthwhile too. I remember I first met the mayor. It was Luis Saavedra, and he was much more quiet and reserved. But it was in 8th grade, and I got, somehow for school, I was in the mayor's office, and I always remembered it actually, and it still looks the same. But no doubt, somewhere psychologically, that seed was planted because I got to meet the mayor. And so I hope,
Which is incredible.
all the kids that we're dealing with now, there's probably going to be a Lobo Little League alumni mayor. I can check off Altamont was mine. So Altamont
you
already
go.
got their nod.
Yeah.
There you
So
go.
we're excited about
Which
the
is a
next
huge
generation.
thing. That is really a huge thing for the kids coming up. So one final question. You obviously, being the mayor, you're not going to be the mayor forever, right? It's a legacy, right? 30,000 foot view where our city is in 10 years. Where do you see us being?
I hope that, and this is fundamentally even why I ran for this gig, and the potential Albuquerque has to, I think, be one of these iconic cities in the Southwest. And I say iconic because we love how we're different. Right? We love our culture, and we love our scenery and our sort of majestic beauty around us. And I think there's a little bit of rawness and grittiness that we all kind of like too. Like Albuquerque's scrappy. And I think for us, there's a way for us to become as iconic as like an Austin or even a Denver or whatever, Salt Lake City, but also not lose ourselves. And to me, that's really powerful because we have what those cities don't in terms of identity. And that's really cool. So my vision in 40 years is that we are as prosperous for everyone as those cities, but that we're also our true, Burque self. And so that's to me is a really powerful vision. I hope it's the city that my kids get to grow up in.
See, that's what we talk about too. I love it here. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Well,
Awesome.
thank you so much for being on our show today. We really appreciate you.
You got it. Great to be with you. Keep up all the hard work.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You got it.
Yeah. Anything we can do for you, let us know.
Awesome. Do you have stickers yet?
Oh,
Did I
man.
give you any
Don't have
stickers?
stickers.
I'll take a sticker.
I mean, there's Metal Mayor stickers on cue.
That's so cool.
So indoor updates that are going to be coming up. We've got Laundry of Love starting.
Yep. So starting February 1st, please bring laundry detergents,
Laundry
materials,
anything.
laundry baskets, laundry
Yep.
bags, quarters. You can either donate funds
Dryer
or
sheets,
you can
bleach.
Yeah, you can give in many different ways. But we will be basically harvesting this stuff at GAR and taking in these donations for the month of February.
The entire month.
It goes the entire month, and then partnered with Shine and United Way of Central New Mexico, there will be an event where people will get to actually do their laundry for free. Last year it was somewhere near 3,000 loads or something like that, I believe.
Yeah. With additional funds that we were able to use to purchase more items and help get those machines running.
Yep. What else is coming up? Let's see.
We've got the awards gala.
Yep, there's the awards
That's
gala is
always-
coming up, so they this is the time. Please,
Nominations.
nominate. If you have a fantastic rookie in your office, nominate them. If you know somebody that should be Realtor of the Year, nominate them. We of course have the Doyle Pargin Award, Lifetime Achievement Award. So, get your nominations in, and please get your ticket for the gala. Let's see.
Gala's always so much fun.
Let's see, the SRS designation is being featured in February here at GAR. And then I think that's pretty much
That's
it
what's
for the
coming
next
up
month,
in the
right?
next couple of months, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got more coming up towards the summer, but for the beginning of the year, but that's still plenty,
We're busy all the time. And, as we heard from the mayor, talk to your city councilors, make sure that you're being involved in
Yep.
city government. That's the way to actually
change.
make the change. So, keep it up, and, let's do what we can to increase inventory here in the city of Albuquerque. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Josh.
What's that in your hand? What's in it, and where can you get it?
Okay, this is your 2023 passport. This is all your information about your board of directors, upcoming events at GAR, classes coming up at GAR. You can get it here, or you can get it at gar.com.
It's also emailed you get the passport on your email every Wednesday. Updates are emailed from GAR every Wednesday.
Yes, they are.